Brad Keselowski driving the number 2 Miller Lite Ford for Team Penske, certainly coming off a big race weekend at Daytona with a win. Congratulations on that, Brad. Brad, we're kind of at the midpoint of the season. The racing's been really good. People are coming out of Daytona with a lot of excitement, anticipation. As we look forward now to the second half of the season, starting Saturday night here with the Quaker State 400, what's your assessment of how things have gone from a racing standpoint, and maybe just talk a little bit about the excitement that we sense out there amongst the fan base?
Yeah, well, we're in the summer stretch here, obviously, and a lot always seems to happen here. It's one of my favorite stretches to get into. This track is really one that kind of highlights it for me. It's been very good to me here at Kentucky Speedway, and got Loudon coming up, which has been good to me, and then a few weeks here to go back to my home track. I've got Bristol coming up, Watkins Glen. So this is, I think one of my best stretches and our best stretches as a team here with the two teams. So looking forward to that, and it has been a very interesting and fun season so far. Of course, it's easy for me to say when I got 3 wins, but I want to keep going on that. I think we've got a great opportunity over the next few weeks to add another win or two and hopefully start the chase off as the number 1 seed. So really just thrilled with that, and thinking, about the sport in general. A lot of strong momentum with things that are going on behind the scenes that, I'm thrilled about with the cars and rules and all the collaboration. So it's really a fun time for me personally and professionally with everything that's going on. So just happy to be here and want to keep going.
Thank you, Brad. We'll take questions. Let's start on the front row here with Claire B. Lang, and then we'll go to Matt, and then we'll go to Mark.
Claire B. Lang, Sirius XM NASCAR Radio. You are so good at this track. Were you the last one that wanted to see a lot of changes, given that you're so good? And how does doing double duty help you this weekend?
I definitely didn't want to see him change the track, but I appreciate the position that Marcus Smith and everyone at SMI was in with the issue. There were some weepers, and those are always hard to fix without just going through and redoing the whole track. And I really liked it as a bumpy racetrack. I thought that was something that was unique, and I adapted well to. But of course, no one wants to sit and wait on the track to dry when it has weepers. So I understood that part. One of the interesting things that I really appreciate about the repave is that when they repaved it, they changed 1 and 2 dramatically. And 1 and 2, it kind of feels more like almost Kansas. It's really fast. In the Xfinity cars, we can run wide open through that corner. We weren't even close to that before, I can tell you, Claire. And, I think that end's really fast. This end over here is really slow, treacherous, hard to get a hold of. And so there's a big discrepancy between the two ends. And I think anytime you have a track like that, it lends itself to compromises with race car drivers, techniques, and car setups, and all those things that tend to open up the box to allow for better racing. Because whenever there's those discrepancies, I think that's when you see mistakes, and that's when you see weak strengths and weaknesses that vary car to car, driver to driver, and that's a really good thing, I think, for our sport. So I'm interested to see how that's going to play out this weekend. Obviously, there's only so much I know, having not run a race on the new surface, and that's why I'm running the Xfinity races, to try to get a little bit ahead of my competition before Saturday night. Hopefully that pays off, and we can get another win at the Cup level and Xfinity level.
We'll go with Matt, and then we'll go to Mark, and then we'll go to Reed.
Matt Weaver, Racer.com. With the Truck Series in town tonight, I'm curious, what is your perspective on how the team has performed so far? No wins for either driver, 4th and 9th in the standings. And also, how do you feel like the changes, the caution clock, the chase, have positively or negatively changed the series?
Well, I think, we have 2 drivers over there that are competing full-time. It would be very easy for me or a handful of other Cup or Xfinity drivers to jump in and out of those trucks and probably raise the numbers, so to speak. But that's really not the goal. The goal is to get Daniel Hemrick, Tyler Reddick a quality opportunity that can position themselves for a future in the sport as a professional race car driver. And to do that, they need to run full seasons and have all those things available to them. And I think as a group, we're still trying to get to where we can run with the Toyotas. They're really, really fast over there, and they've got good teams and incredible resources. So we're not quite at the A level, but we're fluttering right there at that B+ level, and I think we can break through at any moment. I think Daniel Hemrick's been really close to winning a race. Tyler Reddick's been close to winning a race. We need just a little bit more speed and a little bit more execution, and I think either one of those things can happen overnight if we keep plugging away. So I feel as good as you can feel without having a win, that we will get some wins and that we will get into the Truck Series chase with time. But we're not quite there yet, obviously, but maybe this is the weekend. What was your second question, Matt? Yeah, I mean, it's the chase, of course, lines up more directly with the Cup Series. I guess from a fan standpoint, that probably makes it a little bit more easy to foul. I don't want to speak for everyone else. I feel like I had a pretty good hold of it before, understanding-wise. And the caution clock, I think, it's maybe a little bit too early to have a judge on it. I would like to see it go through a whole season. But it's certainly changed the races dramatically, in my opinion. I think the pit stops have gone up, and the tires and the strategy and all those things. It affects the race even when it doesn't come out, because you have to plan for it. If a yellow comes out and you're just outside of your fuel window when the caution clock expires, you're forced to make some tough decisions. So it affects the race even when it doesn't come out, and I think that's a key part to understanding that. And I'm not entirely sure I've formed a full opinion on that.
Go to Mark Garrow, Reed Spencer, Nate Ryan.
Mark Garrow, PRN. Brad, when they tested here, some of the drivers talked about this track still having some character, still having some bumps. Does this track still have some unique characteristics that will play into it even with the repave?
Well, it definitely has a bump off of turn 2. I haven't drove a Cup car on it to see if it affects the Cup car, but it doesn't affect the Xfinity car. I think right now the character can be defined by the differences in banking and width between the two corners, and again, how that makes you come to a compromise with car setups and driving styles.
What kind of compromise are you talking about in a driving style?
Yeah, the compromises, for the race team and the car is, whenever you have one corner that has more banking, more speed, you look at the platform of the car and how it sits on the racetrack. There's a certain way that you would max out that corner that doesn't work on this end. In fact, it's probably the complete opposite. So I would say those compromises from the car setup end, and then as a driver, I think you can be a lot more aggressive on one end than you can the other. And so one end is more of an aggressive corner from a driver's perspective, and the other more of finesse. So switching gears in the car is not always easy to do every straightaway, every lap, between being aggressive and having a lot of finesse, and I think that makes it unique.
Go to Reed Spencer, and then go to Nate Ryan.
Reed Spencer with NASCAR Wire Service. Not only do we have a repave this week, but you've got the lower downforce package. Joey won both the All-Star race in Michigan. You finished second and fourth, I think. Do you guys have an edge?
Do we have an edge? I don't know. I feel like we've been running well, whether it's low downforce or not. We don't have as many wins with the other regular low downforce. We need a better name than low downforce and lower downforce. But I feel like the results have been more positive for us, but I don't feel a real difference in the cars, to answer your question, Reed. So I don't know.
Let's go to Nate Ryan, and then Tucker, and Chris.
Nate Ryan, NBC Sports. Brad, you were saying that you were very encouraged by the direction with the rules and the collaboration. I think if you go back a year ago, things were probably headed in that direction, but maybe not anywhere near where they are today. And this race was maybe a line of demarcation where NASCAR gave you guys lower downforce because you asked about it. How much of things changed from that collaborative process because of this race a year ago, and how would you compare the cooperation collaboration to then?
Well, I would say this race a year ago was a huge landmark for our sport that maybe goes a little bit unnoticed. In terms of, we had collaborative effort for a rules package, and we saw a significant increase, in my opinion, of the on-track product that we saw. And I think that showcased a lot of hope for our abilities to work together as a sport that has kind of created a wave of momentum that we're carrying today.
Let's go to Tucker, and then to Chris Knight.
Tucker White, SpeedwayMedia.com. Now, Brad, given that the track has just been recently repaved, what effect, if any, do you think the low downforce package will have on the race Saturday?
What effect? I don't know if it'll have a different effect here than it has everywhere else, concerning the repave. In general, the cars at Michigan were really, really loose behind someone. I would expect that to be the same, and I would expect turn 3 and 4 to really, really be a challenge, as it's such a finesse corner already, and then you add the lower downforce package to it, and it's really going to be a hold on to your butt corner. But I'm not sure I can fully answer that until the race is over. Hindsight is a lot better vision.
Chris Knight?
Chris Knight, catchfence.com. Brad, yesterday we saw a driver penalized for his actions on social media. You being a social media savvy person, do you feel like that the drivers maybe now have a better indication of now what's more acceptable and tolerable compared to from what NASCAR or maybe from what we can see in the future?
No. I don't know. I was a little bit surprised by, both the comments and the reaction, to be quite honest. I thought there was an understanding, or at least there's an understanding from my perspective that it's probably not a good idea to say what was said. But on the other side, it's my feelings that, we all got to have a little bit of thicker skin than that as well. So probably, my overall thoughts on it is 2 wrongs don't make a right.
Other questions for Brad? We got time for a couple more. Jim Utter.
Jim Utter, motorsport.com. Kind of following up on Reed's question earlier, you have 3 wins, but where would you put your team as in position right now for the chase? Do you think there are things that you would still like to see you get better at?
There's always things, Jim, I think that we always want to get better at. But this summer stretch to me is really going to define our team's capabilities, because we know it's some of our best racetracks. And so I feel like if we can come through this stretch and knock out another win or 2, that we'll be kind of sitting in high cotton for the chase, and hopefully we'll be able to carry that.
Let's go back in the back to Kevin, and then we'll finish with Lee.
Kevin Goheen, Cincinnati Enquirer. You just talked about the chase. This is the 3rd year of this particular format and setup. How do you think that it has grown or evolved in these 3 years?
I think over time fans start to maybe appreciate and understand it a little bit better, and so do teams and drivers, all the industry as well. And I think over time, as we start to understand it, we lose some of those variables that come into play, and we start to know what risks are smart risks to take and what risks aren't. We saw I think in the first year a driver make it with not without winning a race the whole season, almost to win the championship. And it kind of reminded me a little bit of the first chase in, I think it was 04, when you saw teams that would run really well and then they would blow up or have a DNF, and it seemed almost like no one wanted to win it. And then the chase in its older format from the mid to late 2000s developed into a pure points race where one bad race and you knew you were kind of out of it. So it was interesting to see that change, and I think you're going to see that the same change over time if you kind of back up the lens a little bit to see the whole vision of the new chase, that it's going to turn into the same thing where it becomes a don't wreck really conservative layup format, and that's kind of where I've seen it kind of migrate over time.
Final question, Lee.
Lee Spencer, motorsport.com. Since this is kind of the last preview we'll have of the 2017 package for this year, would you advocate perhaps seeing it maybe one more time prior to the chase if there are certain directions you feel a need to go in? You maybe as one of the drivers, multiple drivers and multiple teams, depending upon what you guys see this weekend.
Yeah, I think, obviously subject to change after this weekend's over, but my initial thoughts are I'd like to see it back again at Michigan with just a few subtle changes that can be ascertained from what we've learned over this weekend and the previous Michigan weekend, and just maybe a small tweak from what we've learned, and go again at Michigan in the second race would be kind of my initial thoughts. So yeah, I would say yes, Lee. No problem.
Brad, thank you for coming in here, and good luck this weekend here at Kentucky Speedway.
Thank you, guys.